Victoria?
There we are. Yes. I feel like I hear you through my phone. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Let's do that. There we go. I think that's
Wonderful.
I think that's good for both of us.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so glad that we're able to be on Zoom and to get this show on the road. Sorry for the little bit of technical difficulty. I forgot that I changed the meeting ID by one number. Two numbers.
Oh, I was
So
I was curious. I'm like, this isn't working. I don't know why, but that's okay. Things happen, right?
yeah, things happen. Things happen. So, well, we are going live here on YouTube, and so let's get started. Okay?
Okay.
Three, two, one. Welcome to Love and Money Secrets TV, and I am your host, Dame Lillian Walker. And today we have with us Victoria Finch, and she is going to share with us how she has turned her adversity into a miraculous outcome of events and turned the very much unwanted into the wanted. Victoria, thanks for joining us here today.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate you, all that you're doing and bringing light into the world. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you too. Well, Victoria, before we dive in deep, I wanted to share a little bit with our audience listeners so they know a little bit about you. You're actually calling us, it's a 3 hour time difference. You're actually in Indiana, right?
Yes, yes, that's correct. I'm in Indiana.
Yeah, and I'm in California. And so tell us a little bit about, were you born in Indiana? Were you born elsewhere? And
Yes, I was born and raised in Indiana. And I say that jokingly because when I left Indiana and got into the real world, I was told that cattle are raised and women are reared.
cattle are raised and women are reared. Oh, I'm sure there's a good story behind that. Do tell.
And I didn't understand it, and they finally explained it to me. But
Oh, do you care to explain it with us? Because I'm lost.
it's just say that it's just a thing that I guess you're supposed to say that you rear children, you don't raise children. But, we say it all the time in America and in Indiana. But when I went to college and people were from all over the world, they were like, what? And we also say underneath. We always say up under. It's up
Oh, you
under the
do? I didn't
cabinet.
know that.
Yes, we say it's up under the cabinet. So these are little things that we say naturally, but when you get around other people, they're like, up, under. But anybody in Indiana, when you say, oh, just look up under the cabinet, they know to look underneath the cabinet.
Oh, that's so funny.
I
There's the
know.
little nuances, because it's a big country. Yeah, so there's little, regionalisms and little nuances with languaging, and that's interesting. Yeah, I had never heard or noticed that before, so I'm really glad that you brought that to light.
Yes. It's all that.
Well,
It's all that.
I don't
It's
know
all
if you
that rearing. It's all that being reared.
all that rearing, literally. Well, it's so funny because you and I have known each other for, I think, about half a year now. And I just recently learned something about you that we share in common. And I thought that was kind of interesting. We're both the daughters of a preacher.
Yes.
And so that was kind of interesting when I heard you say that your father was a preacher, because my father's a retired now Presbyterian minister, also chairman of
Yes.
the board of a local university here in Southern California. But all
Oh,
my life he's been a preacher, and your father too is a Baptist preacher.
minister. Yes, he was. Yes, he was. And my grandfather, we have a whole line
Mhm.
of ministers in our
Mhm.
family.
And clergyman. Yeah, yeah. It does seem to run in family lines, that's for sure.
Yes,
The whole
it
rabbi
does.
teacher clergyman thing.
That's right. You're
Yeah,
right. The same thing. We're teachers and educators.
yeah, they kind of go hand in hand. My mother was a teacher, so it's a preacher and a teacher. Because my mother, she still is teaching though, because I think once a teacher, always a teacher. So she was
Mhm.
an elementary school junior high school teacher, and then later on she decided she liked really little ones, so she became a director of a preschool. And
Ah,
yeah, and so she's always been fascinated with how the child's mind works, and she makes it her
yes.
business to teach everybody.
I think that's something we
Yeah,
have
how
in
that
common as well, because we also love how the mind works.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we love how the human mind, how it works, the mechanics, and how the whole thing links and syncs together. And yeah, it is a really fascinating topic.
It is.
So you were born then and raised in Indiana?
Yes, I was.
Oh,
Yes, I
okay.
was.
So you
I
fantastic,
mean,
fantastic.
I've traveled. I lived in France and I went to university there. So, but yeah, Indiana is home. It's always going to be home.
So I'm about to sneeze.
Oh,
So
bless you. I'm going to
first
sit
time
back
on
here just a
camera, I'm
little.
about to sneeze. That's so funny. So I'm sure there's a good story about how you ended up in France, going to school. You said you went to college in France. So what led up? What kind of series of events and experiences brought you to the point where you decided that you wanted to go to school in France?
I love languages, have always loved languages. I think in another life, I might have been a language teacher because they are so easy for me.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in high school, I took Spanish, and we had the opportunity to look at another classroom. So I chose to go to a French classroom. And this will sound familiar to you. The first word I heard in French was extraordinaire,
Was what?
extraordinaire, which is extraordinary.
Extraordinaire. Of course it was.
Yes, les femmes extraordinaires, right? So that was the first word I ever heard. And when my teacher said that, it just had such a melody to it. I guess yeah, we talked about how you say my name, how I like it. It sounds melodic. And so there's something there that I hear. And
Mm-hmm.
the teacher said that word, and I was just like, I'm going to learn that language. So I took Spanish, I think another year. I took French and Spanish one year, and went to Indiana University because they had an overseas study program. And I
Mm.
uh, applied, got accepted, and spent a year in Europe at school.
That's fascinating. So that kind of led your way to your passion and love for languages, and also, how we think differently, and how we express ourselves differently in one language versus another. Um, so we start, we have the love of languages, and I speak French and I speak Spanish and Italian as well. So we have that, we understand how, there are certain things that are expressed in one language that you don't have an exact fit in English to make it sound and to feel and have the same connotation in other languages, but you can pretty much, get the overall idea and convey that to the other
Exactly. Well,
party.
I'm learning Korean now, and that's totally different than French or Spanish, and the nuances there. That it's just crazy how you address people, if they're seniors, if they're juniors, are are they older, are they younger? It's just
The respect.
really getting used to all that, and yeah. That's a lot to get used to, the different ways to address people, because we were used to just calling by name, right?
Well, yeah. So when you were in college, did you know that you wanted to go into the behavioral sciences, or what was your focus and your target at the time?
Well, at first, I thought I would study psychology, be a psychology
Okay.
major. So yeah, so it's something that's always been a part of me. But I just then I then I realized I had to do practicums, and I
Mm-hmm.
had to take all this other stuff, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. So I switched to French and political science.
Oh, French and political science. Wow.
Yes, yes.
So what happened? Tell us a little bit about your story and how things unfolded from when you got back from France, moving forward. What were your 20s and 30s like, and what major victories, Victoria, did you have, and what other? I'm sure you must have had some trying things that happen, as we all do. None of us gets
Yes,
off this planet scot free, unscathed. We all have
yes,
lessons to learn,
that's
mountains to
right.
climb, hills to scale.
and all of that wonderful stuff, right?
Yep, yep, yep.
Yeah. Yeah. My life has been that of peaks and valleys. I think a lot of people have gone through that at some point or another. And for me, I was the youngest of 6 children, raised in a very, very loving home
Wow.
with brothers and sisters. And my sisters are my best friend. My brothers are my best friends. Just a really loving home, but I never felt loved.
But you never felt loved.
Never felt loved, and I never felt wanted.
Where do you
And
fit in the pecking order? Were you the oldest?
I'm the youngest.
You were the youngest
I'm
of
the
6.
youngest. And usually the youngest is the one that is the spoiled, well, and all that. And I have to say that my siblings, they did spoil me. But what happened was we lived in a very small home, and our home was 900 square feet. I know people who have garages that are bigger than that. And that was a 3-bedroom home for 6 children and parents. So the rooms were so small that the boys had bunk beds, and my youngest sister was 10 years older than me. So it was the 2 girls and then 3 boys, and then here comes me at the tail end of that.
You have between you and the next oldest sister, there was 10 years between you?
Yes. But my parents had my parents had 3 boys in between that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's still a big gap for sisters. So you have
for sisters.
So your next oldest sibling, older from you, was how many years older than you?
Oh, he had like 2.5 years.
Yeah, 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and we were really close. But what ended up happening, because we were in this small home, the boys had a room, which is why it's important, why I shared that it was the 2 girls who was much older, and then there was the boys, and then there was me. So the boys had a room, my sisters had a room, the boys' room, the girls' room. I had no room. I had no crib. I had no bed. Whoever would take me would get stuck with me, hence the feeling of unloved.
Oh, wow.
Right? Because my little self thought, well, nope, they don't want to be with me, because every time mom and dad go somewhere, they're stuck with me. And somehow I internalized that. And I can tell you the exact moment that I internalized that was when I was 2 years old, about 2 years old. My parents had sent me out of their room. Of course, I had no room to go to. They asked me to go to my sister's room, which I did, and they told me to get out. I go to my brother's room. They say, get out. We don't want any girls in here. So I'm 2 years old. I've got no place to go. Everyone has told me to get out. So I take my little 2-year-old self and I sit by my parents' door by myself with no place to go and unloved. And what I didn't realize was that I had carried that feeling. Even though they loved me, I really didn't believe they did. Because why wouldn't you want me around? And what ended up happening was, so I carried that with me. Huh? I'm sorry?
And such a busy household. Such a busy household, because you have 5 other siblings that are rumbling and talking and here you are. It's like parents, the more kids you have, the first one, you're like eyes on them 24/7. The second one, not so much. And then the third one, unless they're bleeding, you don't need to worry about it. So can you imagine number 6? It's like,
that's right. Yes, but it was a very,
let us know.
Yeah, but it was a very loving household. But what I didn't realize was that little girl sat by her parents' door for over 50 years. I've won awards. Wow. I've gotten accolades. I made the dean's list. I did all of this stuff, but it didn't matter because I still felt unloved. Nothing mattered. It would show up in relationships. I would be in and out of depression. And I'd go to the doctor, and the doctor would give me medicine and say, oh, Victoria, it's going to be all right. Take this pill. So I take a pill for antidepressants. And this whole time, it's only because I didn't feel love. In 2017, I had a really bad bout of depression. And when I had that bout of depression, I remember being in my room not caring if I woke up the next day. I had just had a major breakup, which, oh, surprise, I knew that would happen because nobody would want me anyway. So it was showing up in my life in different ways. And
Self-fulfilling
one,
prophecy.
so what exactly? Well, we create our own world, right? So Einstein says, do we want to live in a
Yeah,
world
that's
that's
smart.
a hostile universe or an abundant universe? That's one of the major life decisions. I didn't know I was deciding to live in a universe that even though there was love, so much love around me, I couldn't see it because I was feeling unloved. That was a decision I
Wow.
made without realizing I made that decision. Right? So what ended up happening was in 2017, I was going to take the antidepressants as I had done so many times, something deep down in my soul that I will call the divine within said to me, no more. This is not the purpose that I created you for. This is not who you were meant to be. And that I did not take that medicine. I threw that medicine away and I went on a quest. I went on a quest to figure out why I felt the way that I felt. I took off for a couple of weeks. I started journaling. I started just getting really focused, looking into, that's when I discovered Dr. Joe Dispenza. That's when I discovered Wayne Dyer and Tony Robbins, Elanya Van Zant. That's when I discovered those people, right? The secret, because I went looking for it at that point. And when I came out of that time, I came out feeling more alive than I had ever been before. But that was still that feeling of unwantedness that I just couldn't shake. I met a hypnotist. So she took me back to that little girl, and she had me tell that little girl that she was loved. She took me back to that scene. And what I saw, and I just started, and I did it twice. The second time I started crying. And she's like, what are you seeing? I'm like, my dad. My dad came out of the room and picked me up. And he was sad. And he didn't realize I had been sitting by the door. And my dad, and I could just feel his love and how bad he felt that his little girl was sitting by the door. Like I said, I grew up in a very loving household. But my 2-year-old mind, for whatever reason, forgot that part. I didn't go to that part. I just remember sitting by the door. And once I came out of that session, I just knew that this is what I need to do. This is what I need to help people with. This is the journey I need to help them with, because there are other people that are hurting, that are sad, that are going through something and they don't know why and they can't get out of it. So I'm a master hypnotherapist. Then I'm also a master practitioner of emotional freedom techniques, cognitive behavior therapy. So I started learning, right? So did you see the psychology came back?
Yes, it was, the root was there all along.
It was there all along. And so we have everything we need.
Oh,
It may look a little different, but you've got it in you.
yeah.
And so now my core mission in life, or my purpose, the reason that I was made on purpose for a purpose, is to transform and empower and inspire people to live confidently and know that they are enough and know that they are loved. And going back, whatever that piece of unloved was, time, so that it can make peace with that.
Yeah. So in your history is how you solve the mystery of whatever it is that you're struggling with, even if you're in ignorance of it, which I think a lot of us, for a long time, we are in ignorance of those things because our
Yes.
brains, the way, uh, you know, mechanoceptively, the way your brain fires and wires as well as stores things in your body as well as in your memory bank, It always takes into account a self-preservation element, which is part of your ego. Your ego is trying to keep you
Mm-hmm.
small, keep you from making mistakes that will re-injure you and give you the effects of what you have experienced in the past, on the
Mm-hmm.
assumption that if you do these same behaviors, you're going to have the same outcome.
Yes.
And so here we are, la di da di da, until you have some sort of an event, like, you had that an awakening. It sounds like you didn't really have somebody on the outside that, admonished you or brought it to your attention, but you just had your own recognition. It's
Well,
like,
no, I had a breakup. Just kind of like the love of my life. It was a breakup. It was a guy. There's how
God
many
knows you.
stories do we have about the guy?
Well,
Yeah,
you know what? That's a big deal because we're
that,
here, in this
that,
planet experience, we're supposed to experience love in all its forms. So the universe knows exactly what it is that we need so that we will get love right with ourselves. Because really, at that 2 year old body place that you were in, you were loved, but you didn't recognize that you had a lot of love around you. So in your mind of a 2 year old, you're like, well, I can't go with my sisters, I can't go with my brothers, I can't go with my parents. I don't have a room. There's no room for me. So it's like, what am I doing wrong? Because
mm-hmm.
kids and adults are just grown up kids.
Yes, yes. Like
How
I
many
said,
how many grown-ups do you know that are running around going, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? Esther Hicks talks about it, and I think every single one of her talks, that your brain goes, what am I doing wrong? 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 What am I doing
well,
wrong? What am I doing? Well,
we're,
that's where your focus and attention goes. You're going to keep doing wrong. That's what you're doing wrong.
we're wired to the negative, right? We're wired to the negative because we're wired to self-preservation.
Yeah.
So we have to be conscious. We have to make a conscious decision to see what's positive. And that's why gratitude is so important, because our brain is wired to find that tiger around the corner, right?
The
And
reptilian
and
brain.
that's right. And when we're in that state of fight, flight, or freeze, our prefrontal cortex can't work. That's the one that's telling us, well,
Emotions.
there's really not a tiger there. Chill out, right? But it can't, because we're just like this. And so once we're able to recognize that, then we're able to pull ourselves out of that state. And the sad thing about this is that so many of us are like that every single day. I was that way for 50 years. I smiled. I had a pretty little mask on that people thought was happy. When I say pretty, I'm not talking like physically pretty, but I masked that was happy. And yes, I smiled, and I went to the dinners and I had the fun, but it was not what I was feeling inside.
Yeah.
Not at all.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because I think a lot of men and women, I don't think that this is unique to the female experience.
I do not think so either.
I don't think it's something unique to the male experience. I don't think it's a gender identified thing. I think it's a soul experience. I don't care where you are on the planet, how tall, how short, how big, how fat, how skinny, how pretty, how not pretty. Your soul is having this experience, and everything is about not just the relationship you have with yourself, but how you have relationships with others. And the first relationship, as we're growing up, that we have separate from ourselves, is the relationship that we have with our parents, our siblings, and oftentimes that defines and refines who we think we are, and then
Mm-hmm.
shows up again and again and again in the intimate relationships that we have. And depending to the degree that we are able to be aware of certain things in those relationships, we either adjust them or things get adjusted for us, where the universe says, okay, well, you know what, this isn't working. We're going to separate the two of you, because you're going to learn a greater lesson being in this breakup than you would if you were to stay. You saw what you were supposed to see while you're in the relationship. We need you to have a change of perspective, so now you're supposed to break up. And this was only supposed to be for a season, for a specific reason, and then you're going to see what this reason is sooner or later. Otherwise, we'll have to do rinse, wash, repeat until you get it. And it
That's
sounds
right.
like you got it loud and
Yes.
clear. And you know what? I've got to really give you an applause here and an accolade, because you had enough, not just presence of mind, but you knew instinctively, I need to take a step back and I need to take a time out. And I
Mm-hmm.
need to go, wait a minute, what's going on here? There's something. Yes, there's a breakup here. Yes, this hurts like hell, because breakups are never never, pain is never a pleasant thing, but
Mm-hmm.
we always have pain with purpose. God doesn't inflict pain on us just for, kicks and giggles. No, there's a
Exactly.
reason. That is to
Mm-hmm.
curb a behavior, to bring your attention to something very specific that you need to be aware of. And the moment you become aware of it, that's oftentimes just the awareness makes it go away. Other times, being aware of it and realizing, oh, wait a minute, now I'm aware of this. I see where this root goes back to XYZ situation. Now you can go, okay, now I can on purpose manifest things instead of manifesting it by default. So take us
That's
along.
right.
You talked about how you took 2 weeks. A lot of people are going, I don't have 2 weeks. Well, listen, my friends and gems, we all have all the time that we need to learn and grow. And if you don't do this mindfully on
Well,
purpose,
I've got an answer to that one, actually. It's kind of like people who say, I don't have time to go to the doctor, and they don't go to the
yes,
doctor, and they don't take care of themselves. And there's like, I don't have time to do that because I'm working. I've got kids. I've got commitments, yada, whatever, whatever, whatever. And then the next thing you know, if you don't go to the doctor, your body's going to say, too bad, you're down. And somehow that 2 weeks or that week comes, right?
yeah,
So
and
when
you
your body says, and you have to think of it that way. When your body says something has to change, then something has to change. If I may, I'd like to share a story, if I may.
please do.
There was a woman, and she needed to go to the grocery store. So she left her apartment. She went down the stairs, around the corner, and there was this big hole in the sidewalk. She couldn't get past it. I mean, it was huge. So she's like, well, I won't be going to the grocery store today. So she goes back upstairs to her apartment.
Hmm.
Next day, day two comes. I got to go to groceries. So she goes downstairs. She goes around the corner. There it is again, that big hole she can't get around. So she goes back upstairs. Day three, day four, she starts to reason. How can I get, surely they're going to fix this hole. How can I get around this hole? Day four, she's there. She sees the hole. She can't get around it. They haven't fixed it. She's frustrated. She feels struck and stuck. So so that night she goes to bed and she says, I've got to have groceries. I don't even have food for tomorrow. How do I get around that hole? Because I don't think they're going to fix it overnight. She wakes up the next morning. She goes down her stairs. She goes around the corner. She sees the hole. She takes another street. Sometimes what we have to know is that we have to have a mind, as Wayne Dyer says, that is open to everything and attached to nothing. So when you say things like, I don't have 2 weeks or I don't have this, yes, you have it. But you have got such an attachment to that life and to whatever it is that's holding you down that you've not opened your mind to the possibilities. And sometimes we have to take a different direction.
That I think that's so true, because if you don't, like you said, when you are flat on your back because you got
Which
pushed out
you've
of a
been.
four-story window,
Yes.
or you get hit by a bus, like in my case, riding my bike, I got hit by a bus, or you get, it could be any kind of accident or any unwanted set of circumstances that puts you in a position where your calendar gets cleared. And now you have no other choice, because you're in a hospital bed facing up, where now your job 24/7 is to heal from that physical circumstance. And you have to wrap your brain around, because I know when I got hit by the bus, my first thought was like, how, why is this happening? How could this? I thought I took every, I look left, I look right. Next thing I know, I'm flying. I never got a chance to complete my cycle of action to look left again. And now I'm airborne. I don't know what hit me, where, how, or anything.
Mm.
I'm taking all the safety precautions. I'm in the bike lane, which is where bikes belong, not where cars or trucks belong or buses. And it didn't matter. The universe
Yeah.
decided, you know what?
Yeah.
We're going to change your perspective. And
Yes.
now you're on a different trajectory. You clearly didn't have time for this before, but guess what? Now that's all the time you have. And
Hmm.
now you are in an unwanted situation, but you know what? No experience is wasted. And
That's
it's
right.
there to teach you something really specific.
Yes. And we
So
have to
move on.
understand.
What?
So we also have to understand, and I heard this story from Wayne Dyer again when I'm on my quest, right? And one thing that he says is that no one ever dies from a snake bite. No one ever dies. Have you heard this before? No one
Yeah, I
ever
have.
dies from a snake bite. It is the venom that flows through our veins that kills us. Now, he says that when he's talking about, he says there's no justified resentments. That's how he uses that story. But I want to use that story in life. If you are running around doing the same thing every day, carrying those limiting beliefs, carrying that not loving yourself, not taking care of yourself, not taking time for yourself, that's just like that snake venom that's going through your body. But in this case, you have the antidote. The antidote is within you. And all you have to
Yeah.
do is to make the decision to take it. And you will find the time, you will find the money, you will find the opportunity. It will happen once you decide that you have to take that different direction and you're not going to die from the venom that's coursing through your veins.
Yeah. It's so very true. So in your, I just heard in the last 24 hours, and it sounds like you're saying basically the same thing, that in your problem lies the answer to everything that you've been looking for. The
It's all
thing
within
is,
you.
it's an inward, not an outward reach. So it's not give me a pill for this depression, give me a pill for this ache or pain. It's not an outward reach. It's an inward reach. And it sounds so simple, and it is simple. Um, is it easy? It's relatively speaking, it is easy. It's not like climbing Mount Everest. The thing is that most of us don't want to spend the time going within. Some of us don't have an idea what that would look like to go within. Some of us are fighting too much with the thoughts that we think are us, because no one has ever told us, oh, all those negative thoughts of I'm not enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not doing it right, everybody else is doing it right, what am I doing wrong? I always fall short, or I didn't quite hear all the instructions, or I'm doing it maybe 90% right, but it just doesn't feel normal or natural. Of course, it doesn't feel normal or natural. You're just starting this inward thing. Or maybe you've done this inward thing for years and years and years, not 100% believing it, always leaving that 10%, which is the crack where your ego and your not enoughness and everything else has come in. And now
Mm-hmm.
you're like, I'm wanting to up the ante, but I don't really know how. And that's the beauty. You don't need the how is up to
That's
the
right.
one. It's not up to, but we really don't have enough people talking about really, okay, what does that look like? It's like, yeah, I hear Tony Robbins, I hear Wayne Dyer, I hear Norman Vincent Peale, I hear all these people, Oprah, everybody talking about limiting beliefs, but my limiting beliefs are I own them so much that I'm not even sure what those limiting beliefs are. If I could just have, would you just spell them out for me so that I can just start working on my list one by one? And so oftentimes we don't know what where to start with that, and what does that look like? How do I do that
Well, a
right here,
lot
right
of
now?
that is just becoming more aware of what you say to yourself. Become aware of when that creeps up. It's the awareness. It's and it's in for me it was difficult to become the observer of my thoughts, because if you're in the picture frame, if you're in the frame, you can't see the picture. So you've got to step out of that frame so that you can see the picture. So where do you start? You start with identification and awareness. You start listening to what you're hearing and what you're saying to yourself. And then as you start listening to those, then you're able to ask, okay, where is that coming from? At that point, you can start questioning it, question everything. So one thing, my father was a Baptist minister and said, never believe anything you hear on the pulpit. In the pulpit, go learn for yourself, right? So you have to listen to yourself, and you have to be aware, where did that come from? And what I learned was, for me, that 2-year-old girl was driving the bus for so many years because I started to hear her. And then eventually, and I'm a mindset mastery coach now, but she'll still try to pop up every once in a while. The difference is now I know how to stop her. I can stop her in her tracks. And how do you do that? First of all, I listen to what's saying. If I feel like my confidence is a little low, if I feel like it's like, oh, Victoria, that new program is never going to take off. I don't hear those words anymore. But if I were to hear that, now I know to stop that. I clarify it, I understand it, and I say to myself, maybe it won't take off, but what I do know, I don't know if it will take off or not, but what I do know, that if I don't take this step forward, it will never take off. I was working with a client today, and she was very afraid. She had something, and she gave me permission to share this. She had something happen, and when this happened, she was afraid that it was going to happen again. So I said to her, okay, what if it happens again? What will you do? And she said, oh, well, I would do this, this, and that. I said, so you already have the solution. So you're holding yourself back for this unknown future that you have. And now you have just created the future that might happen and how to solve it. She's like, I never thought of that. So the only way to truly live in the now is to stop worrying about that unknown future and stop being a prison of your past. You have to leave the past where it is, which is behind. Mm-hmm. And then you have to not worry about the future, because you can't stop it anyway, but you can create it the way you want it to be. So now if this thing comes up, she has an answer for it. I'm like, so what if it happens again? I got in a car accident. I could say I'll never drive again because I got in a car accident. But I need to get to where I need to go, so I'm going to drive. And in this case, she had a voice that needed to get out, and she had people who needed to hear it. And she said, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you were mentioning about we're like, I'm going to use this water bottle as an example, but we all are like jars. And when you have a label in a jar, everybody can read your label, but you're the contents of what's inside that jar or that bottle. So from where we sit as a container, everybody sees our label, but we don't see our own label. You can read this label, but as I sit inside here, I know I have a label, but I can't read it. And I think that's part of the value that we have from working with each other when we work with professionals like yourself that are trained not only from an academic and a practical clinical perspective, but you also have your own life experiences, which is what brought you to do this work so that you can help guide and lead people and help them resolve and dissolve these emotional traumas that we have no idea we are slaves to this silent aspect of our own selves, because it's our own selves that are keeping us back, but we don't realize that that is an energy that we embraced, and the way we framed it at the moment when that thing happened is still holding us back right now. And we
Mm-hmm.
know from not just from psychiatry and psychology studies, but we also know from neuroscientists that the first 7 to 8 years of your life, you are in a theta brainwave state. And
Mm-hmm.
most things that we see as I guide people in these different neurosomatic processes and so forth is that we see that a lot of times, you can regress somebody back and find that the original thought, feeling, or emotion that caused that anchored, that is binding somebody, that is keeping them. Sometimes it could be keeping them from either moving forward in a relationship, or it could be sometimes, you have somebody who reaches a financial limit where, they can't reach over 200 grand or 3 million in their business. Maybe it's been 10 years, they get close, 2.7, 2.8, 2.9 mil. But gee, if you can make the first million, they thought, oh, okay, you make the first million in business, it's like, okay, then the second million, you're like, cool. And then you cannot crack that $3 million mark. And it's tied to something that happened maybe when you were less than 7 or 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe something then that happened again when you were either a teenager or a young adult was reframed in another way. And you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot that I even thought about that. And now you're 30 or 40 or 50 years old, and you're like, with all this experience, all this knowledge I have, I should be way past that $3 million mark. But it's been 10 years trying the same thing over and over again. And until you have, like you talked about, that awareness, sometimes we can do it on our own, but sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is invest in yourself. You will invest on vacations. Sometimes we invest. I'll never forget one of Brian Buffini. One of the things that he would say is that sometimes people will invest more in toilet paper than they will in books and coaches for their brain. You really ought to
Yes.
consider or reconsider what end of you is more important, your bottom end or your top end. If
Mm.
you have not bought a book, if you had not paid either for a coach or paid for could be a therapist or someone that's going to help you get past those barriers that you have not been able, because again, I can see the label on your jar, but you can't see your own label. Maybe paying somebody who is not a friend or a family member, someone who has maybe framed to see you in a certain way. Sometimes having that objective third
Yes.
party professional that will say, whether you win or whether you lose, I'm here as a professional to have an objective point of view and say, what? Let's take you through some processes, not based on your belief, that will help rewire and refire the different sides of your brain. And let's kind of peel back some of the stuff that you're going on through, in your life right now. And let's see what's really holding you back. Because the truth is, for all of us, it's us, nobody else but
Yes.
us. We don't want to
Yes.
believe that it's us, but it's us.
Yes. Many of my clients are coaches, speakers, and entrepreneurs. And I was working with a client that is a coach, and she was struggling with confidence. Is what she was struggling with, was confidence. And she said, Victoria, I can help everyone around me with the confidence. And it reminded me of my mask when I was, feeling depressed and uplifting all these people, but I wasn't feeling it. And it wasn't until I took off and got help from someone else that I was able to move forward and past what was holding me back. And she was saying, I've tried the techniques that I've learned on myself. I've meditated, I've practiced, I've tapped, I've done it all, but I can't seem to break the barrier. We had a 30-minute session. 15 minutes in, she was in tears, absolutely in tears. And she didn't know where they were coming from. She's like, I don't know why I'm crying. I said, because you are finally letting go of that bad energy of I'm not good enough. I'm not confident. I'm not worthy. What are they going to say about me? You finally are able to release this. And so and I just told her, just cry, just let it out, just honor your feelings, love on yourself. And she did. And 30 minutes later, she was at like a 9. And I'm not confident. I can't do this. And by the time we finished, she had gotten down to a 1. For the first phase, she'd gotten down to a 1. And she was crying. And she's like, I'm a 1, 10 being intense. She was at an 8 or a 9. And her feelings of, unworthiness. And she says, but my back hurts now. She says, but my back and my shoulder hurts now. And I said, well, tap it out. So we did a little bit more work. But what it was, and the reason why she was able to feel that is because it's like if you hold your hand closed for so long, I don't care how long you hold this hand closed. If you hold it closed long enough, when you open it, it's going to hurt.
It's going to hurt
because it's been constricted. So we worked about 10 minutes later, and then we got rid of all the pain. And by the time she was left, she was at a 0. But she's like, I could not do this for myself. She couldn't do it for herself because she was in the frame, and she needed somebody that was on the outside, that wasn't her family, that wasn't her friend, that could see the label in your example.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's sometimes in one set, it's amazing how in one session, possibly two, you don't have to. I mean, I think the model of, and there's obviously therapists who do that where, you have 15, 20, 30 sessions. You have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Some people who've been doing therapy for 20 years and they're still rehashing, the old things of past. I don't think that,
See, I don't get that. I have clients that come to me that's been in therapy for years. Yeah. And it's not always one session or a 30-minute session, as you said. Yeah. But it's not years. It's not years either. It's not rehashing the same thing over and over again. Yeah. It's progress. It's moving forward. And my clients, and I'm not saying that therapists are bad or anything, because they've made progress. But I have to say, yes, you've made progress, but you're still there. You're still there. So like the lady going to the grocery store, sometimes you got to take a different direction, like I did when I did the hypnotherapy session. And then I did another session to help flesh out the rest of it. And then I've had people coach me still, because even coaches need a coach, right? We've got to invest in ourselves too, because we're in our own frame. We can't see the picture. So we too have to have the same thing.
The finest athletes you'll see, like Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods, from the time he was a little boy until he still has a coach that coaches him to adjust his swing to be at the top of his game. Most athletes, all professional athletes, separate from the coach from their team, they have a separate coach trainer that works with them exclusively one-on-one to optimize their performance so that they are at the peak at their performance. Any kind of biofeedback that they need, any kind of rewiring that they need in their system in order to have that breakthrough so that they can get to the next level, so that they can oftentimes transition from being at the peak physically in whatever sport that they're in, and now maybe they're trying to transition into a professional arena where they're able to use and glean all the experience from what they did physically in sports more into the business world, because that's a huge mental shift when you go from being on the field to now being in a different environment in the business world where you're able to still use all that experience, which is phenomenal, but now you're using it in
Yes.
a different way, not necessarily testing your physical boundaries any longer, but now, you know, the physical boundaries are always tied to your mental boundaries, make no mistakes. And so that is a different perspective where they have to wrap their brains around. It's like, okay, I am no longer going to be on this team anymore. I am now changing my identity. And that's very traumatic for some more than others.
And I think that's why
And
so many
so,
people hold on to those limiting beliefs and those anxiety is because it becomes their identity. They don't know what they will be without it. And they'll say, well, you
like I
know, my anxiety, and then there's that secondary gain too, right? Well, my anxiety, I can't, you know, I can't do this because of my anxiety. I can't do this because of my depression. And it becomes their identity and who they are. And my message, if no one hears anything else I say, is you are not your anxiety. You are not your depression. You are not
that's right.
those things. You are divine. You are
Yeah.
powerful. Those are not your identity.
Yeah, I say that all the time when I have people who say, I'm sad. I said, no, you're not sad. You might be feeling sad, but you are not sad. I mean, the last time I looked up in the
Absolutely.
dictionary, I didn't look up in the dictionary and I didn't see that your name was the synonym to the feeling of sadness.
That's
I'm
right.
mad, I'm sad, I'm angry. No, you're not. You're feeling anger. I'm feeling
Mm-hmm.
sadness. But you are not anger. That is a misuse of language. When you say that you are anger, that's not true. The only emotion that you legitimately are is love.
Love.
And love.
Absolutely. Love.
Anything else is a lie. I'm anxiety, I'm sad, I'm frustrated, I'm depressed. That's not true. Look it up in the
When
dictionary. That's not it's not a
I actually used to say, I'm an asthmatic. And I would say my asthma. And I would say that and I would own that I was an asthmatic. So there were certain things that I couldn't do because I have asthma and whatever. Once I was able to make the shift, the mind shift, I've gone off of 3 asthma medications.
you believe it, yeah.
I don't even use my inhaler anymore.
You don't
In
need
fact, I barely even carry one because I released that. I had carried that so long with me that being an asthmatic, I'm an asthmatic. I never say that anymore
because you're not. Yeah.
because I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not an asthmatic. And once I was able to let my mind and my body know that, then I haven't had any issues with any asthma at all in the last 2 years. I did go, well, that's not true. I caught a cold or something, but this is what happened. Back in February, I caught a cold or something. I don't know what happened, but I was having problems with breathing. And it had gotten to the point to where I went to emergency.
Oh.
And I remember saying to the doctor, this is not my asthma. I don't know what's going on. And it could have been COVID because they did find a spot on my lungs, but they didn't know what it was. But they kept saying, well, you have your asthma. And then they kept treating me for asthma. Normally, when I go in a hospital, when I used to go in a hospital due to an asthmatic episode, and notice my terminology, and I used to say when I had an asthma attack or my asthma bothered me, when I had an asthmatic episode, I would be in a hospital 3 to 5 days.
Oh my gosh.
This time I went into the hospital, I was out in 18 hours. I was out in 18 hours because what happened when I first got there, I was pretty constricted. I couldn't breathe. I was very constricted. Once they got me to a point to where I could breathe a little bit, I started doing my own energy healing. I did a video on it. 18 hours later, I was out of that hospital, breathing fine. Had that been 3 years ago, I would have been in the hospital for 3 to 5 days because my asthma was flaring up.
Yeah, You don't realize, and Dr. Joe talks about this, how you're reconditioning the body to a new mind. And if you're not reconditioning your body to a new mind, then you're allowing the preconditioning of your body to an old mind, which is history repeating itself. And if you don't want the same outcomes that you've had in the past, which you clearly took ownership of your responsibility in being the master of your own ship and saying, no, 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 I'm not going to be a slave to what my old body memory has been. I am going to not let the voodoo curse in that my asthma. No, it's not my asthma.
Mhm.
It's an episode that's happening. And you know what? I can turn this boat around. And when does that start?
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
Not yet.
The doctor was like, be prepared to be here for a few days. I'm like, I'm not staying here a few
I'm like,
days.
I'm not letting
And
that in.
they're looking at me like, you're in pretty bad shape. I'm like, I'm not staying here. That
Yeah,
I had made that decision
yeah,
that I was running the bus if you were driving the bus
yeah,
and not this body. And I was out in 18 hours. And the doctor was like, I don't know what you did, but we're going to let you go.
yeah, yeah. So I think that is a wonderful place for people to recognize, especially during this time, during this whole pandemic. And there's there's as much as there's a lot of perceived chaos going on, there is a lot of peace, a lot of abundance, a lot of great things that are going on right now as well. Today, I was talking to I had one of my clients that we were on during a session. It was a 2.5 hour session, and we were going over. There's something I call an autobiometanosis, which is it's a process where you go back into your history and you basically get a composition notebook and you fill it up with every memory you've ever had from birth until present. And there's a whole process to it that is it's a very healing, very integrative um, process. There's something about your actually writing in your own hand
Mm-hmm.
that happens.
Which when I took off for 2 weeks, I journaled.
Yeah.
And that's first thing I talk to my clients about, that writing. You're right.
There's something about writing, and then the integration of it doesn't matter if you don't remember them in order, but as you remember your very first memory to the very present moment until this present point in time, good things that happened to you, bad things that you did, good things that you did, every single memory, and you have your entire autobiometanosis in that book. And then there's a process that you do before you actually go to burn that. But it's amazing how sometimes we know what it is that we need to do. This particular client, it's been over a month that I told him, to do this. And of course, we all, I think I only know of one person who ever did this. I don't know how she did it in a day, but she did, because mine took days.
Mm.
I happened to do mine. You would think, wow, that's kind of a crazy time of year. I did mine during the month of December. I don't remember. I think it was after Christmas. I don't remember if it was before Christmas or after Christmas, but it was right there in the middle of December somewhere. And I remember I didn't know how long it was going to take me to write, but it was, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 days, maybe close to a
Mm.
week, every day writing, 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 writing. Then your hand gets tired. So you stop writing, writing, writing. So when I did mine, like I said, I wrote the whole thing out in about a week for my particular client. And I was in the midst of a divorce, managing my 3 kids. I had a lot of plates that were spinning all at the same time, a lot of projects, my radio show, yada, yada. And my client, it was over a month ago, maybe May, I don't remember. I'd have to look at the date to see when it was that I actually assigned that to him. But it's been over maybe a month and a half, maybe 2 months, still not done. And as much as obviously he wants to progress and things keep happening, but I keep on going back to, you know what? We all ultimately know what it is that we need to do. That doesn't mean that we do it. That's no
Yeah.
different than, and this is not to villainize any particular profession, but how often do you see a doctor who is into health and well being as they smoke a cigarette? It happens. Maybe in California, it might happen less than it might be. Maybe in Europe, you'll definitely see that a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
On the East Coast, it seems like in the Midwest and the East Coast, smoking is more acceptable. Here in California, we tend to be more health conscious, so doctors
Yeah.
don't tend to smoke.
Not so much. Maybe in Chicago, but not so much here.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
here, doctors in California, for the most part, don't smoke. But in other countries, it's not uncommon to see a doctor smoking
Mhm.
cigarettes, cigars, things, pipes, and things like that,
Mhm.
because somehow there's a, I'm going to call it a disconnect, you know, and that's true in all sorts of different professions. And so we oftentimes know what it is that we need to do, and we don't do it because sometimes I think we fail to put ourselves on the list, even though we want to fix and heal these things. We get stuck in the hamster wheel where it's like you wake up in the morning, your feet hit the ground running, and you're off to the races. It's like you know you got to run to get to work. You know, you do everything that you need at work, work whatever extra hours, get home, run off to the gym, work out, or maybe because of COVID, your gym's not open, so you know ride your bike or you do your workout in a different manner. You run back, you know, shower up, quit, you know, eat a fast meal, and then you're back on to returning phone calls, emails, text messages,
Yep.
prepping everything you need for the next day. And you're not really taking the time, you're not being mindfully aware that you got to get yourself on that list. And the greatest gift that you can give yourself is to have a true, honest relationship with yourself. Take 30 minutes. It doesn't have to be 2 hours. Take 30 minutes. Heck, take 15 minutes. Quiet your mind. Sit down. Do your whether it's journaling or if you're doing an autobiometanosis, whatever that case might be, but just quiet yourself. Do a guided, if you don't know how to do a meditation just on your own, make no mistakes. YouTube, the greatest free resources
Yep.
of free meditations. I have a 3 minute neural health reset meditation. If you want to just take 3 minutes, you'd be surprised what you can accomplish in 3 minutes. But just take that time, put yourself on the list.
And we have to realize that self-care is not being selfish at all. In fact, it's being selfless because we pour from an empty. So many people try to pour from an empty cup, and if it's not empty, it's on fumes, right? And they're constantly, but yet it manifests itself. it,
Yeah.
it shows up. It shows up in irritability. It shows up in lack of sleep. It shows up anyway because what you resist persists. It's not going to go away. So what you have to do is, like you said, you have to put you on the list and you have to put your oxygen mask on first.
Yeah. Let me talk. I want to really talk the whole thing about what you resist persists in. This is so true on. We have multiple disciplines that are existing where we actually acknowledge this. Uh, in the emotional, the spiritual, the physics world. Chris Voss, who talks about "Don't Split the Difference," I believe is a book that he wrote, and from um, from a metaphysical perspective and in the spiritual world, one of the things that is really blatantly obvious is that the more, whenever you have, I'm going to call it a dark or heavy energy. If a dark or heavy energy is trying to hide something, the more you try to hide something in the spiritual realm, the brighter it shines. So, for example, if I have someone who is trying to do me harm, or they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to steal from me, or they're trying to not pay me what is due to me, so they're trying to hide something so that I'm not aware that I'm owed X amount of dollars. The more that entity, that being, that person tries to hide it in in um, in a meditative space in 5D, the brighter the light shines on whatever it is that they're trying to hide. So even though I may not know that that exists, I have no idea intellectually from a physical perspective. I don't even know to
Mm-hmm.
look for that because I don't have an awareness, because I don't have a memory. I don't have a reference point. I don't know that it exists. As soon
Right.
as I quiet myself down, though, in meditation, guess what? That shines bright. So even though cognitively I don't know to look for it, but because I spent that time in meditation, in that quiet space, my body ends up tripping upon something that I wasn't even looking for. And now I'm going, oh my God, what is this? I didn't even know this existed. Oh, holy cow. And now I'm going, oh my gosh, oh my, holy cow. I didn't, how does that work? It's a metaphysical principle. There's actually now
That's right.
scientists, physicists have actually been able to scientifically prove this. Chris
That's right.
Voss, in his book about Don't Split the Difference, he talks about in hostage negotiations, whenever you have an adversarial type of negotiation, the more you try to hide something, the brighter it shines, the more obvious it becomes.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
He doesn't talk about intuitively picking it up. He understands some of the thermodynamics and the energetics that are behind, and it has to do with how the human being, I think, inadvertently, it may not want to out itself, but it can't help,
But it comes out.
when the
It
light
comes
is
out.
shining.
That's right. And that's
So
another
that's why
thing
the
why
truth,
healing,
we
that's why healing is so important. So I'm Victoria Finch, the heart
absolutely.
healer, because I think that it starts in the heart and it finishes in the heart. Now, when you can have that brain heart coherence, that's when you start to really get that healing, that deep healing inside, right? It comes from the heart. And what I know goes back to what you're saying, when the whole thing about the light shining bright. If you don't heal, you will cut people and bleed on people who didn't hurt you. And so you,
Hurt
and
people hurt
because
people.
it's not going to go away. It's not going to go away. It's like you said, that light's going to shine on it one way or the other. It's going to shine.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
question,
One of the things,
so the
the
question
question is,
becomes, so the question is, do I want to keep doing the same thing that I'm doing, getting the same results that I'm getting, looking for things that are outside of me? Or do I truly want healing from the heart, from the inside, so that it will spread love, joy, and peace throughout the outside? That is what we need to know. Imagine this, if you will. You lose your keys inside your apartment. You're getting ready to leave. The lights go out. You drop your keys. You're looking for your keys in the dark. You can't find them anywhere. You're looking for these keys. You happen to see a street light outside, and you're thinking to yourself, I'll never find my keys in here. It's dark. So you go outside and you start looking for your keys outside. I know this sounds silly, but bear with me a moment. You're outside looking for your keys under the street light. Someone comes along to help you find those keys, right? And after a while, they're like, hey, where'd you lose your keys? Well, I lost them upstairs. But it's dark upstairs. So why are you out here? Isn't that what we do? We look for things outside ourselves. If you lose your keys inside,
why are you looking?
that's where they are. And that's where you're going to find the healing. That's where you're going to find the love, the joy, and the peace. It's in the heart, on the inside.
It's so true what you're saying. I did some training last month, actually in August, a couple months ago. And one of the things I learned during a medical face reading class that I took was that, and Lillian Pearl Bridges wrote the book on Chinese face reading. And this is like an art form that's thousands of years old, and it's incredible. But one of the things that was revealed during that class was that once you can identify, once you know what the different lines of the face, what they mean, because for example, like everywhere in the world, doesn't matter what culture, doesn't matter where you were born, doesn't matter how you were raised, you know, if you smile, that is obviously evidence of joy. Everybody recognizes, no matter what language you speak, whether you're deaf, blind, or dumb, that a smile, it's a positive, joyful expression on your face. And that's going to leave different marks on your face than if you are angry. And if you're mad or if you're raging, you have different lines and different muscles in your face that are used for anger. Just the same for shock, skepticism, surprise. So these are universal things. And the thing that fascinated me, and it's like when I first heard it, I thought that can't be. I mean, how could that possibly be? But I then saw it with my own very eyes, where Dr. David talks about how oftentimes once you call out into the light and bring somebody's awareness to, so for example, like there could be a line on somebody's forehead. If you have a transverse line on somebody's forehead, that oftentimes suggests that they went through a very dark night of the soul type of experience. And as they recall whatever the circumstances were that led to that dark night of the soul, that wrinkle will actually disappear and will become less and less right there and then. And our training was over a 12-day period in August. So there were people where we're calling out different things that we're seeing on different people's faces, and Dr. David had us take pictures the very first day of class as opposed to the last day of class. And so we actually could see some people's faces changed quite a bit. Some people,
Yes.
because everybody has a different history and has different things that are being called out and not being called out and so forth. And so it was remarkable to see eye shapes change, wrinkles that were there that were no longer there anymore. The direction, some people's mouths were turned down, now they're more neutral or they're
Mm-hmm.
up. And it was just something as simple as once you call that out into the light,
Yes.
somebody's ear, there's a notch in their ear. It's okay, what happened when you were between the ages of 2 and 3? Oh, XYZ happened. Now all of a sudden that ear is like smooth and it's not as pinched off as it was before. And so,
I've Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. I've had clients, one particular when you're talking popped in my head. Most all of my clients, their face will change. The lines in their faces will usually change. This one particular client, and this was the first time I was aware that this was happening. I was working with her, and we were working. We were a couple of weeks in, and I'm an intuitive when I coach. So I knew there was something that she wasn't quite letting me know about. I knew it was something, but it wasn't something, I'm not going to look at you and say, okay, so what are you lying about? Well, I might, but
no,
I
no,
didn't
no.
for her. But anyway, but I knew there was something. So I asked her in a way that was gentle. And I said, I just got a feeling there's something else there. I know we've worked on some anger, and I know we've worked on some abandonment and some other things, but I just feel like there's something else. Would you do me a favor? I said, would you please take a few really deep breaths for me? And I just want you to be calm, and I want you to tell me what you're really feeling. Could you do that for me? And she did. And she said, I feel betrayed. So we had worked on all these other things, but the underlying root cause was the betrayal. So we started working on the betrayal. And I looked at her, and I just happened to have my iPad with me. It was the first time I'd ever done that with a client. And she was totally different. Her face was different. She stood different. First time I ever did this with a client, I had my iPad with me. I said, I want you to look at yourself. Literally, the lines of her face was gone. She looked 5-10 years younger. She kept looking at herself. Literally, she was like, what did you do? She says, is that? And she's like turning around, and she looked like a totally different person. And
yeah.
And it was so true. Once we got to that root cause, it was really there, and she was able to call it out and share it openly. Yeah. Then we were able to work on it, and her whole face changed. I had one client who kept coming to me, and physiology is really important too. As you do this work, sometimes physiology will stand a little taller. You have the physiology of excellence, is what they call it in NLP. And I had this one client that came to me. He said, everyone thinks that I grew an inch. They keep asking me what I did differently because I was taller, and they couldn't figure out why I'm taller. And as it turned out, the reason that he was taller, he almost an inch taller, was he used to be like this. And now he's straight, and he stands straight. And he used to walk with his hands in his pocket and slunched over. And now he walks straight and his head is level and it's proud. And so he literally looks like he's grown about an inch. In fact, we measured it. It was 3/4 of an inch.
Wow. Yeah.
That we literally measured him. I said, and only because once he was able to clear what was going on with him, he was able to stand and have that physiology of excellence and stand a little bit taller. And the woman, her face totally changed. She looks so much younger. She says, I haven't looked like this in years.
The thing is, our bodies are holographic, and based on the energy and the emotions that we're feeling, that all gets recorded in our bodies.
Yes.
And so that's why you can, once you are able to bring to light whatever it is, especially if you have any kind of energetic patterns that are stored in your face from grief or trauma or sadness, whatever the case might be, once you're able to bring it to light, then the energy is released and you're no longer stuck with that energetic pattern in your face. And now your face is unmarked because you let it go, quite literally let it go.
Yes. Yes.
So it really is a fascinating, it's fascinating how the human body works.
But it leaves clues like success.
Yeah, that's what those, they're success.
It leaves clues.
It absolutely does.
And it's just a matter of, are you willing to invest in yourself? Are you willing to have that mind that's open to everything and attached to nothing? Are you willing to take that different direction and live in a universe, make the decision to live in a universe that is full of abundance of gratitude and love? That's if you make that decision. Yeah, that's what it comes down to.
Ron Cohen, who's the publisher of Beyond Words Publishing, they're the ones who published the secret DVD and book and Beyond Heaven and Earth, Alexander Eben Pagan's story of when he basically had a near-death experience and so forth. And one of the things that Ron, I'll never forget when he said this, he said that the mind is best used like a parachute, because a parachute is only going to do you good if it's open. Mm-hmm. It does you no good if it's closed. And so you have to have you have to keep your mind open like a parachute, because nothing happens in a closed mind.
Nothing happens in a closed mind.
Nothing happens in a closed mind. You actually have to have an open mind in order to accept, receive, and surrender, and to be able to grow.
That reminds me of what I was telling you about that little $2 check I got.
That's such a great story. Okay, so this is a perfect way for us to end this show, because it's such a great manifestation story, and I challenge our viewers and listeners to put this to the test. So tell us about your $2 check experience. This is so
yes. So I go to the mailbox and I have a check in the mailbox for $2. So I'm really excited about this $2 check, right? Who gets excited about $2? Victoria does, because she knows what $2 can become. So I go in the house and I tell my son, I've got a check for $2, and I'm so excited. And he's like, Mom, what is wrong with you? So I said, no, you don't understand. You see this $2? It's going to turn into $20. It's going to turn into $200. It's going to turn into $2,000 to $200,000 to $2 million. Are you listening? Are you following this? So he's like, whatever, Mom. So next thing you know, about a week later, I'm doing laundry and there's this $20 bill in the dryer. So I go to my son. I said, you know that $2? Here's the $20 it turned into. So he's like, where'd you get that $20, Mom? I'm saying, I've literally found the $20. So then I'm saying, watch it. It's going to turn into $200. Well, I have this bag that I carry with me. I hadn't carried it for months. I decided that I'm going to go somewhere and I want to carry this bag with me. I look in the bag and there's exactly $200 in the bag. And I'm like, Cameron, guess what? I got $200. I told you that $2 check was going to turn into two. And then right now I'm up to from that $2. And then next thing I know, what happens is I get this credit card offer, right? And the credit card offer says that I get X amount of points or whatever if I spend so much on the credit card, and it's zero interest and whatever. And guess how much I ended up getting? $2,000. Actually, $2,600 that I got off this credit card. So now I'm working on my $200,000. But people will say, and you can say, and this is great too, because if you think about it, I already had the $20 and I didn't know it, but yet I believed that $2 was going to become $20. I already had the $200, but I didn't know it. So my 20 became the 200. Now the $2,000 came from an outside source, just like the $2 did. And it's just going up from there. So I'm saying that you can manifest anything you believe in.
Absolutely. But yes. See, you had first of all, you had excited, joy, gratitude, appreciation for the $2. And yes. Then you had the eager anticipation that the 2 would turn into 20. So it did. And then you had that continued elevated emotion and focus of gratitude, appreciation, and eager anticipation of an unexpected, good, positive thing turning that 20 into 200. And then it did. And you kept on rolling it forward. So now now you're up to 2,600. Holy cow. So from 2,600, it's going to turn into, I don't know, 2 or 300,000, and then to 2 or 3 million.
That's right. We're going to just skip right to the million. That's right.
It doesn't have to stop at the 2 million. It can go to 20 million after that. You just keep it moving forward and grow. Right. And it doesn't take as long as people think they're going to think, oh, well, that's going to take 10, 20 years. No.
This happened in a span of, I'd say probably 6 weeks.
Can you imagine to go from $2 to 2,600 in 6 weeks? Hello. The thing is, things don't happen. I mean, if you want to do the way things everybody else does, then things happen linear. But they don't happen in a linear space continuum when you're following this type of process where you're adding the elevated emotions, this is the person that I really equate to being able to language and dovetail the different modalities in such a beautiful way where he actually shows you the scientific evidence. And then he has his life experience himself. And then you have 20,000 people across the world who have now gone through his advanced retreats is Dr. Joe Dispenza, and people who've done it from all walks of life, people who have never meditated to have meditated for 20, 30 years, young, old. I mean, you're not so special that you can't do this. I mean, if you fog up a mirror, you can do this. This is your divine birthright.
It is. So but it comes down to, and even if you think, well, that's 6 weeks, 2,600, that's not much money. But you have to understand, that's free money. That's addition. That's overflowing money. That's abundant money, because that's just overflow is what that is. So when that little $2 check came, I was just excited, and it's just going to keep going, and it's going to keep going, and it's going to keep going. And one thing that and I don't know, this could be in the Bible, I don't know where, but where is it, or who is it that said that something about being grateful for the smaller things, then I will give you an abundance of things, or something like that. Although I can't think of it right now.
Yeah. So, there's a scripture that talks about for if you have the faith of a mustard seed, which is a tiny amount that,
it's not that one. This is that if you can handle, and this is the universe too. You got to think about this. If you can handle that $2, then it will give you more money. But if you can't handle the $2 or the $2,000, what makes you think you can handle the 200,000? And the universe knows this. Yeah, so it's not coming.
Yeah, it's the parable of the talents. Remember, there was the one with the 2 talents.
That's it.
And that's what it was. It's like there was the one with the 2 talents. He only had 2 talents, and so he hid both of them because he was afraid he was going to lose. So he didn't invest anything.
That's it. Yes.
And the one with the 4 talents and the 10 talents, they ended up multiplying their talents even more and more. So because they were good with what they had, more and more was given. Because you were faithful with the $2, you knew that the $2 was just an indicator. It's not like there's no more where that came from. I better hide it. No. Or I better save it. No. You knew that that's just an indicator that there's more to come, that the two can turn into 20 to 200 to 2,600 to 200,000 to 2 million. And because you were still in that spirit of gratitude and appreciation, it continued to multiply. That's what the
Yes.
parable of the two,
Yes. Yes. That's what it is.
that's
Yes.
what it is. So if you're
Yes.
given whatever amount, it's all relative. Somebody may start off with very little, others may start off with quite a bit more, but you all have the ability to multiply it exponentially to whatever degree you believe that you can. There's no limit, because
Mm-hmm.
really on a check, if you have the number two written as opposed to 2 million or 20 million or 200 million, the universe doesn't really care. It's just ink on paper, digits.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As far as when you deposit that into your bank account, it's zeros and ones on a computer screen. So does the universe really truly care? A dollar, $1 million, 10 million? It doesn't. It really doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
No.
we give value more to one versus the other, but the universe, it's like
But the universe does care about what you care about. So
exact.
if you start caring about it, then it will give you more of what you care about.
Yeah, and
That's right.
whenever you doubt it, you push it away. And the more you don't entertain doubt, and you're like, it's coming. I don't know where. I
It's
don't know
coming.
how it's coming.
Exactly.
That just magnetizes it to happen faster and faster and
Yes.
faster.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So this has been a magical hour. Thank you, Victoria, for
Oh,
sharing
thank you.
with my friends and gems how you've been able to have these really miraculous turnaround of events, and how you were able to discover this mystery that had been plaguing you for over 50 years, and you were being basically able to turn that adversity into prosperity, not just for yourself but also for others. And so if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best place for them to reach out and connect with you?
Yes, you can connect with me on Facebook at
Okay.
facebook.com, just ask Victoria, Instagram.com, just ask Victoria.
Just ask
You can,
Victoria.
and also, believe it or not, my email is Victoria at justaskvictoria.com. And I do offer a no cost complimentary discovery call. So if you're dealing with doubt, if you're dealing with confidence, lack of confidence, or if you want to be more, what I say, more connected, confident, and content, give me a call. Just ask Victoria. I won't charge you
Very
for a
good.
complimentary 30-minute call.
Fantastic. So there you go. Get confident, connected, and content. Just ask Victoria. Thank you
Yes.
for tuning in to Love and Money Secrets TV. I'm your host, Dame Lillian Walker. This has been my wonderful La Femme Extraordinaire, Victoria Finch. Just ask Victoria. And be sure to tune in, tap in, turn on to Love and Money Secrets TV. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention our show sponsor is Killer Influence Charisma. That is
Nice.
San Diego Hypnosis Institute, Dr. David Snyder. I am one of his proteges, one of his advanced students. He is absolutely phenomenal. Check him out at nlppower.com. We thank you, Dr. David Snyder, for being our program sponsor. And we are going to pick one lucky person to win this t-shirt today. So if you comment below, the way you can be selected is by just putting a simple comment below. Tell us what you liked best about what you learned in today's show. If you have any kind of question, comment, concern, specifically either for Victoria or myself, this is your free online classroom where you can ask anything and everything, and we are here to help you. So thank you, my friends and gems, and ciao for now.
Bye. Love you.
Love you too.